Hi, this is Kareem Amr, and welcome to the Power Up MasterClass series brought to you by Cognigy. In part one of our series, we consider in detail how a highly engaging, highly personalized next-generation customer self-service can be achieved. Today, we will discuss how to perfect this next-generation customer self-service. As mentioned, I'm Director of Enablement Services at Cognigy, and I will be your host today. I'm joined by Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst at CCW. Brian, I'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, well, I was thrilled to be part of the first webinar, but I'm even more thrilled to be part of today's masterclass, and I'll tell you why. I'm a perfectionist. I believe that we can consistently not just identify problems and catch up with where we need to be today, but instead really look to the future. Because if we're not building experiences that are going to consistently get better for our customers, get more empowering for our employees, drive longer term success for our businesses, then we constantly risk falling behind. We constantly risk losing our traction to competitors. We constantly risk creating the kind of frustration that we can't recover from. And so if we as a community agree to figure out what we can do to create that perfect experience, no matter where the customer interacts, that's when we're going to be on the right track. And I'm thrilled to provide some guidance in getting there today.
Thank you, Brian. And our discussion today will be organized around 4 big topic areas. First, enhance the overall experience. Second, redefining personalization. Third, challenges to orchestration. And finally, achieving perfection. Throughout our discussion, we will share some insights, a number of action items, a real-life example of a Cognigy customer perfecting self-service, and at the end, we'll leave you with some key takeaways. So to start us off, let me turn to Brian.
Yes, well, perfect setup there, and diving right into enhancing the overall experience. Now, this entire masterclass, the title, the framing, the marketing, it's built on this idea of next generation self-service, right? So you wouldn't be to blame if you've falsely misunderstood this to be that self-service is an independent goal and objective. It's like an end in and of itself. But the truth is it's not. And as we look at this next slide, I think it's important to remember that yes, we are hoping to contain more interactions in self-service. We are hoping to have more effective bots throughout our customer journey. We are trying to make self-service better. But ultimately, self-service fits into the overall journey. It does not exist in a vacuum. And this really means 2 things. One, we can't think of our self-service experience and our overall experience as 2 separate things. It's not, well, that bot was really cool, but that bot has nothing to do with what's going on in the overall customer journey. Instead, we have to make sure that what customers are looking for from a great interaction with an agent, we're also mirroring those same qualities at the bot level. If they want personalization, if they want conversation with a live person, then we have to do what we can to mirror that in the bot world. 2, we have to remember that self-service is part of this overall journey. So that might mean that, yes, it provides a great resolution for a customer and saves them the time and energy of waiting for an agent. But it could also mean capturing valuable data about the customer so that when they do escalate to an agent or when they do come back to work with us in the future, we make those conversations and interactions better, more personalized, and more productive. And so as we embark on this discussion about perfecting self-service, we have to remember that the most perfect self-service is one that doesn't feel like a separate experience or a bonus add-on to our existing journey, but feels like a truly cohesive piece of it. It feels like a mechanism for delivering what customers want. And so we can't have that discussion without knowing what customers want. So let's move to the next slide to find out exactly what that is. So from our research, there's 3 major areas that we want to be looking at. 1, speed and convenience. Time is money. Make things easy. You've heard all versions of this cliche, and the truth is it matters. 90% of customers are more likely to support brands that offer easy and quick and simple digital experiences. So your bot has to do 2 things. 1, it better be easy in its own right, but 2, it also better contribute to an overall more convenient and faster journey for the customer. 2, they care about personalization. They want to feel valued as people, not as numbers. They want to understand that you recognize them, that you empathize with them, that you understand them, and that you're building experiences for them. And 95% of customers are more likely to support brands that really emphasize this human connection. And then finally, accessibility. Customers want access to great support around the clock in their preferred channels on their own terms. You've heard about the omnichannel resolution. You've heard about digital transformation. This absolutely applies here. We need to be great, not just available wherever customers are. So unfortunately, as we move to the next slide, we will see that we're not delivering this both throughout our entire journey or at the self-service level. Right now, long wait times are the #1 pain point affecting customers. And many customers also face things like repetitive questions and limited support hours. What these speak to is that we are not, in fact, making our experiences easy. We are not making them quick and convenient. Instead, we have all these digital channels, all these supposed pathways to efficiency, but instead of making them easier for customers, we're adding to their frustration. And just to really speak to additional hazards here, only 20% of brands right now feel as if they're delivering a seamless end-to-end experience. That means that not only are customers going to face friction as they move from bot to agent or agent to bot, but there's going to be a loss of data, a loss of personalization, a need to repeat information, which is just the antithesis of what customers are looking for. And then 2/3 of customers do not feel recognized or valued when they reach that live agent. So one, we're not getting our agents what they need. And two, we're not preparing our entire organization to really recognize what customers are going through and deliver contextually relevant experiences. And you put all this together, and what it shows you is that it's not surprising that our stat reveals that only 15% of customers trust chatbots to solve their problems. If they don't feel that they're getting what they want in terms of resolutions, in terms of speed, in terms of personalization, then they're not going to trust self-service. But the bigger thing here is that if they're not trusting self-service to start their interaction, if they feel like it's a complete waste of their time, then what happens is they don't use it. They don't share the information. They don't give us that stuff that we can then use to make their overall journey better. So it's this vicious circle where the self-service experience isn't good, customers don't use it, then we don't learn about them, and we can't make any channel better. And when that's the case, we're not delivering what we want. And so this really provides a backdrop for understanding why we have to start to think about perfecting self-service. I'd like to move into the next slide, which is our action plan for starting to address some of these challenges and start to think of self-service as a piece of a greater CX puzzle. So #1, analyze customer feedback and analytics. You really have to understand what customers are looking for, what mechanism for service, whether they want self-service or an agent, and where they want it, and then build your experiences accordingly. So you have to know what your customers want and what they're going through to be able to build the right framework here.
Our second point in our action plan is to review journey maps to identify gaps and opportunities. We've discussed previously how important journey mapping, and this is not a groundbreaking topic, but here we know that this is essential to break down and see where the gaps and opportunities are. And this is across the entire customer journey. So we can't take any of this customer journey and look at it in isolation, but look at it as a whole.
And then for 3, what's that old Socrates quote? The wisest man is the one who knows he's not wise. Probably butchered it here. But the point here being that when we design self-service, we have to accept that not all customers and not all issues will fully resolve their issue in self-service. And so for as much as we want to design that perfect self-service experience that's extremely easy to use, that provides real resolutions, we also know that inevitably some customers will escalate. They will move to new channels. And when that happens, we have to make sure that handoff experience is seamless, easy, and contributes to a more personalized journey for that customer.
And the fourth point in our action plan is to calibrate the matrix based on this new CX vision. And this is, again, going with the understanding expectation that traditional matrix, or maybe perceived matrix that are used for success, may not be applicable here. And then we need to adjust and calibrate based on this CX vision. So it really resonates here the fact that it is necessity to be agile and be ready for change here.
Yeah, and so moving to our next section, I wanted to take a second to dive into personalization because, I think it's inherently obvious, not that we're delivering it, right? But I think it's inherently obvious to understand how if you have a really great self-service experience, you use conversational AI, you build that next-gen self-service, why that might make your experience more efficient, more frictionless, more convenient for the customer. But where some organizations sometimes get tripped up is how does this make things more personalized? In the digital world, we know that we're not having these lengthy conversations. And if we're talking self-service, we're not having a human to human conversation at all. And so where does personalization fit in? And so that what I really want to dive into here is that this ambiguity is creating a major challenge for organizations. Only 6% of companies right now are truly satisfied with the amount of personalization they're delivering. Now, there's a number of areas that are causing this problem, right? There's insufficient data. If we don't have the information about our customers, of course we can't personalize things for them, right? There's insufficient training. So even if we have the data, if we don't prepare our employees to actually use that data to create more personal connections, it's not going to seem personalized. We have a transactional approach to service, right? So many brands, unfortunately, by design, look at every interaction as a separate interaction. And if that's the case, then you're not going to get to know customers. You're not going to see how their preferences evolve, and you can't personalize. But one of the biggest challenges right now is this lack of clarity around what personalization means in the digital world. And so I wanted to do here for a second is thinking about how digital has evolved and how it has become such a centerpiece of our customer engagement strategy, really looking at what the different levels of personalization are. And so we at my organization, CMP, have developed a personalization spectrum. And this, I believe, is covered on the next slide. Yes, where we're going to look at different ways that you can personalize. And so obviously, we started all the way at the left. There's none. You could just say, we don't care about personalization. We have no interest in doing it. Our experiences are always going to be generic. And I'm not going to say that's fine, but that's your choice. And some people just don't really want to go in that direction. The next level, which is a little bit better, but not good enough, is pretend personalization. And this is where you can add those wildcard variables to emails. So you can say, hi, Jim, boy, have I got an offer for you, where it's just, you throw in the name, but the actual service, the engagement, the experience is ultimately completely generic and the same for everyone else. Then you have passive personalization where you might be available in different channels at different times. You might have representatives who can speak different languages, which in theory will allow you to accommodate different customers' core preferences. So it might feel like you're really delivering some degree of personalization, but you're not actually making the conversation relevant for them. They might be able to get you in their preferred channel, but when they contact you, they're still having that same conversation that they would have had anywhere. So it's really not a huge degree of personalization there. Then we move into polite. And this is where you might say, thanks for being a VIP member, or as a loyalty bonus, we're offering you this. It's starting to move in the right direction. It's starting to show that you as a brand identify them as a specific customer who's doing something unique with them, but it's not actually delivering anything meaningful, contextual, timely, based on what that customer is going through. And then we move into these last three stages, and each of these has considerably more value in today's experience. So one, productive. This is where using information that you have about the customer, you start to instantly tailor the conversation. So as an example, let's say that I, ordered pizza from a restaurant using an app, and then I want to change the topping from, mushrooms to pepperoni. Instead of having to go through, open the app and say, hey, I'd like to change the order. Here's my order number. Here's the topping I want to change. The bot or the app automatically tells you, are you contacting us about this order? And then you can proceed with a faster way to make the change. It already gives you any difference in pricing or a new ETA on the delivery. It happens right away. And so it's really recognizing who you are and then delivering an experience based on who you are. Now, the next extension of that is being predictive. So based on what we know about the customer, what issues they've had in the past, what products they bought, we can actually anticipate their next need and start to deliver them proactive engagement. We can start to prepare our agents to have a better conversation. We can have our bots saying, are you calling about the phone you bought 2 weeks ago? Are you having a problem with it? Starting to really tailor this to what they've gone through and anticipate. And that's really where you start to save a lot of time and demonstrate true value. And then finally, there's poignant personalization, which is doing all that, but it's also having those in-depth conversations where you really get to know the customer. Obviously poignant, not too applicable for a lot of digital channels. I don't think anyone needs a bot to spend 10 minutes having chit chat with them about their vacation plans and what they did over the summer and what they're doing this fall. But predictive and productive make a lot of sense. And brands agree. We actually did a survey where we presented these options to organizations, and predictive was seen as sort of the goal, the holy grail, if you will, of what personalization looks like. Now, this spectrum applies to the entire customer journey. But what about self-service specifically? How can we personalize there? And so this next slide really covers this. So if we look at next generation self-service, it's going to have some key elements which drive personalization. One, contextual availability. And so self-service options will pop up on the screen or be delivered when it's most logical for a given customer. So if a given customer, is, ordered a product and they are on the FAQ page looking for a return, it'll kind of preemptively say, okay, do you want details on how to return your product? Or I see you bought this, let's process a refund. So it really considers context when deciding when to engage with the customer. Clear recognition. There is nothing more frustrating to me as a consumer, and I hope you agree, that when you start to interact with a bot or a live chat conversation and your account number, your username is right on the screen, and it still asks you, can you verify your account number? You already have it. And so starting to recognize who I am and skipping those steps where possible is extremely important for self-service. You absolutely want relevance. So no customer needs access to the entire knowledge base for every issue. And so if the bot can just wall itself off and jump directly into what is most relevant for that issue, it's going to save the customer a lot of time and increase the likelihood they're going to get what they want. Conversational capabilities are key. Customers should be able to speak and get responses in their natural language. Using AI, that is certainly possible. And then finally, we want a good data pass-through. So if I'm a customer and I spend 5 minutes interacting with a bot and I give it all the information about myself, all the information about my issue, and then eventually I do reach that dead end and I have to speak to a live agent, it's going to be a highly impersonal experience if that agent doesn't have any of that information, ask me to repeat it again. So really ensuring that everything I've shared, all the context that your AI has demonstrated is necessary, goes directly to that agent so he can ensure a completely seamless experience from bot to agent and vice versa. And so that's really important there. And so some action plans for the idea of personalization right now on the next slide here. One is defining personalization for your customer base. Now, we said that our data showed that brands identified predictive personalization as the most important, but there are going to be some nuances for your brand. There's going to be cases where you just want a simple, quick fix with a basic tech support issue, a basic manufacturing concern. You may not need a high degree of personal relevance. Then there's going to be other cases where you talk about finance or medical situations where you're going to want more of a poignant personalization, where they really start to demonstrate a true appreciation for not only who you are, but your emotions. Understanding that degree of personalization will, one, tell you how you have to tune your bots and what kind of experience you want, but also where bots might not be appropriate if you can't match that level of personalization for the customer.
Number 2 in our action plan, determine, collect, and democratize the necessary data. Now, to perfect self-service and raise the CX bar, it is crucial to strategize and organize the data that you collect and plan how you will use it in the context of your CS initiatives. Broad data collection is not helpful. The key is collecting the right data in the first place, sharing and ensuring that internal teams have access, and only then turn data into actions.
Yes, and I know that's something you're going to be speaking about quite a bit later, because that is so important when we think of perfecting self-service. But when it comes to personalization, another huge area is measurement, because we've historically as a community always thought of, okay, we can measure handle time, we can measure resolution rate, we can measure these very tangible efficiency metrics. But how do you measure something human and fundamentally emotional like personalization? Well, the key is if you're looking for productive or predictive personalization, you're trying to make these experiences more precise, more efficient, more effective. And so looking at things like how many questions did it take for the customer to establish their issue? How long did it take them to get a resolution that worked for them? How much qualification? What is really looking at how long it takes to understand the customer, how long it takes to start to go from what is the customer interacting about to let's work on the resolution. that efficiency does speak to personalization as well. So understanding why, if you had all the data you need to understand this customer and their issue, how much time could you save? How much easier could you make the self-service experience? Using metrics to assess that will let you know that not only are you making things more personal, but you're making things more valuable and convenient for the customer. And that's the ultimate goal.
Absolutely. Now, final point, because after all, we're discussing about the topic of perfecting. And here we need to build that framework to become more predictive and proactive. So once we identify that these are the goals, being more predictive and proactive when it comes to personalization, then what is the actual backbone? What is behind to be able to allow this to happen? That's the importance of having the right framework. That is going to allow for things to be consistent across when it comes to data, getting the right data, but also providing the right personalization at key moments of the customer experience journey.
Yes, and I couldn't agree more. And I think that, again, we're gaining so much data from this front line when we have an effective self-service tool. And to not use that data to make that experience more efficient and future experiences more anticipatory would be a huge mistake. And if we're trying to perfect self-service, we certainly can't do that. So moving to the next area of our conversation, we want to look at orchestration, right? I started this conversation by saying that the goal here is not just to have this really awesome, super funny and charming and amazing bot, and then it's completely isolated from the rest of the experience, right? We want to be creating a truly cohesive journey. And unfortunately, in the status quo right now, there are some challenges for this. So if we move to the next slide, we really see that, we need to have connectivity. We need to have this truly unified journey where we have a singular view of what's happening in the experience. Because when you have that, you can say, okay, let's handle these issues or these customers with self-service. Let's mitigate the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Let's identify what we can sort of automate, and then ensure that, one, we're saving our agents time for the most high-value, complex, emotionally resonant work. Two, we're gathering what we need about every customer. So whoever escalates to the live agent, we're going to be prepared to deliver a seamless and truly cohesive and personalized experience. So understanding and looking at your journey in a 360-degree lens, understanding how it all goes together, that is so crucial, not only for making self-service better, but making that entire handoff and journey process more effective. But unfortunately, there are some challenges to that. And that's where, we look right here, but it's simply, we can complain about silos. We can complain about disintegrated technology, but the truth is, it's still a problem. Right now, our data shows that the majority of companies do not have a 360-degree view of their customer experience. 80% admit that they are not end-to-end, that they have fragments between their channels, between their touch points. 91% require agents to access multiple systems for even basic customer support issues, which again is going to lead to wasted time, impersonalization, things we don't want. And then finally, only 11% of companies say that agents are consistently getting context about customers who escalate from self-service. So how are we going to create this seamless experience where the customer can get exactly what they want at every phase of the journey if in 9 out of 10 cases, the employee who receives a customer from self-service has no idea what that customer said or what they've been through? It's going to lead to a fractured self-experience, which is going to do two things. One, bare minimum, it's going to lead to a lot of wasted time, a lot of impersonal conversations. Two, it's probably going to discourage a lot of self-service use, right? Because if I know that I'm going to put all this information into the bot, it's probably not going to solve my problem, but worse, I'm going to have to repeat all that information again. Why would I even use the self-service tool? Why wouldn't I just go directly to the live agent? So if we're trying to build this cohesive journey where the customer gets what they want on their own terms, we absolutely have to address that fragment. And then another key area here is that it's not just about technology, right? It's not just about our systems not speaking to each other. We know that our customer engagement function is spread across numerous teams, and the typical organization identifies that their different stakeholders are not aligned in objectives and action plans. We have the IT department, we have the marketing department, sales, service, whatever, all focusing on different priorities, looking at things in a different way. And if they're not aligned, then there's no way to ensure that every channel, every bot versus agent interaction is getting that same message to the customer. It's going to lead to a dissatisfying experience. So moving into the action plan here, what can we do about this? So one, really looking at what end-to-end means in your experience. Now, it's easy to say that, oh, we just want to have all of our channels perfectly connected and we want to do all that, but that might not be realistic or even necessary for every organization. But certainly some degree of cohesion, some degree of singularity is important. So understanding where do you want to minimize that friction? Where do you want to minimize that need to repeat or overlook up information? What should a seamless journey throughout your organization look like? Define that and then decide what technology you need to build that.
Our second point of action plan is to identify opportunities to reorchestrate customer journey. And again, this is the need here to be able to pivot quickly and adapt when it comes to analyzing and taking decision on customer journey. And it's important to have the right orchestration, the right conversational AI platform, because sometimes, depending on the choice, it is hard to make that reorchestration happen. So importance of identifying the opportunities, but also acting then on these opportunities by taking concrete actions.
Yeah, and I think the next one is a really important point here, because so often when we think about technology, you're going to hear, marketing materials, promo around that one perfect, silver bullet contact center technology that's going to offer you every channel, every capability, every piece of data. And one, it's probably exaggerated, but two, even if it was the case, we know that organizations have a lot invested in their existing systems. They have a lot of red tape to go through when they're buying technology. They have a lot of challenges for training agents, training employees, training their IT team on what to do with new tech. And so this notion that you're just going to be able to rip and replace at every given moment, we know that that's completely unrealistic. So what you want to do here is identify what are your biggest technological challenges and what solutions in the market, which may only focus on a few phases of the journey. They may not be completely all encompassing, but what solutions exist that can integrate with your existing tools, your existing platform, your existing data, your existing knowledge of as far as what agents are comfortable with. Use those technologies to minimize some of those bottlenecks and enhance what they're doing right now. When you can find the technology that's built to integrate as opposed to being built to replace, that's when you're going to have experiences that are both effective, but also far more scalable, far more practical, and far more instant at a time when we don't have 6 months or a year or 5 years to figure this out. Our customers want amazing self-service and amazing journeys right now. And we need things that are going to be built for speedy yet immensely effective deployment. And this is a really important area for that.
And finally, fourth point of action plan is to achieve stakeholder alignment through clear expectation settings. And two things that we see very often here. First, we seeing that often we don't have the right stakeholder, or we don't have all the stakeholder assembled here to look at this. And this is the idea of it has to be a cohesive. This is not an IT-led initiative. This is an enterprise-led initiative to affect customer experience. Now, going from senior management to the people that actually talk to in a contact center as well, to your agents. So it's important to have this alignment across teams, and also to set the right expectation. And what do we mean by setting the right expectation? Well, very often, maybe there's this idea that everything is going to be right from the get-go. We're just going to implement, and this is all going to be fine. Well, the right expectation, even from senior management to down, is to say, well, this is what we always recommend starting small, is this is going to be a journey. This is going to evolve. We're going to iterate over time. And this is why setting the expectation from the beginning, we have the right, we measure right, and then we take the decision accordingly.
Over the course of the last, what's it been, a half hour, 40 minutes or so, what we've gone through is one, understanding that perfect self-service is perfect because it's built to add value and be part of the cohesive journey. We then looked at the fact that just because we're going digital and not as conversational doesn't mean that we can't have high degrees of personalization. In fact, the best personalization uses what you know about customers to make their interactions faster, more relevant, and more cognizant of what their most urgent needs are. Then we've looked at the idea that in order for this to happen, we have to understand what it takes to truly orchestrate a journey across all touch points, all channels, and make sure everything is moving together. So what is it then? We put all that together. The next step is ultimately achieving perfection. And this next slide hits on one area that I think is sadly, for all the hype about AI, all the hype about digital transformation, is sadly missed. And that is that we're not just trying to deal with a little bit of extra call volume. We're not just trying to resolve a few more issues using bots and taking our agents off the phone a little bit more. What we're trying to do is use every touch point to create the most valuable possible experience for customers. And right now, there's things you have to think about. One, you really have to embrace self-service not as deflection, but as a value add. The question should not be, could our bot kind of maybe solve a problem that would otherwise go to the phone or go to an email or live chat agent? It's instead, how can our self-service tool handle this better than an agent would be able to? Are we able to deliver service information faster or give more comprehensive guidance or ensure more accuracy of response? Think about all these different areas that self-service can do better in certain cases and then play to those strengths. Secondly, use digital technology as an advantage. Right now, only 11% of companies say that they're actually using digital technology to make the experience better. These are companies that are using things like conversational AI and using geo-targeting and real-time translation to actually do things that a human agent, frankly, could not do, that you could not do over the traditional phone call. Right now, 89% of companies are essentially saying, yeah, maybe we have a self-service tool, but it's effectively an FAQ page. It's effectively just regurgitating information from our knowledge base. Why settle for that when you're trying to compete on the customer experience? When you have all this technology available that can allow you to make conversations more relevant, make it easier to gather data about customers and encourage them to know that when they use self-service, they're not just going to maybe solve their problem, they're going to get the most valuable support possible. That is what it takes to truly perfect self-service. Now, brands that do this are going to outperform competitors. You see right there, if only 11% of companies are doing this, if you're part of that 11%, you're basically crushing the competition right there. So you certainly want to be part of that club on that front. To achieve higher customer satisfaction, there's a difference between silently solving customers' problems and preventing them from being horribly upset and actually satisfying them and making them loyal. And when you design experiences with value in mind, that's when you're going to start to achieve that true satisfaction. You're also going to want to build a culture of innovation. So when your mindset is not, how can we solve as many problems as possible by minimizing as much workload as possible? Yeah, maybe that saves you a few bucks here every month, but that doesn't get you to the point where you're literally delivering the best experience. If you start to say, how can we think about how AI technology is evolving, how data platforms are evolving, and using this to make conversations better, when that is the culture of your organization, that's going to lead to more advanced problem solving, more proactive engagement. And to point number 4, it's going to lead to a future-proof CX where no matter if there's another macroeconomic change in the market, if customer demands change, they want to be in a new channel or they want to interact in a new way, you're going to be prepared to make that happen and solve that problem. And that's how you remain connected with your customers and better than the competition. So extremely important to be adopting this framework here. Now, over the past, part of the conversation, we've mostly been talking about research and theories and frameworks and recommendations. But Kareem, I know you have an example of a brand that has done this, that has begun perfecting their next generation approach to self-service, and they're seeing some meaningful results from it.
Yes, a real life example coming from one of our customer, Bosch. Bosch, multinational with a history within innovation, really understand how strategic conversational AI is and the importance of achieving and now perfecting self-service. The overall goal for them is not to replace agent, but is to augment human skills, make life easier for Bosch employees, and create great experiences for their customers. But let's go from the beginning and discuss how the journey started. One of Bosch's first virtual assistant project was deployed in 2 days. It was a joint bot across various business teams, HR, digital business communication, and the crisis management team. It was both an employee and manager-facing bot, helping with COVID-19 related information, support how to work from home, HR information about benefits and travel safety, and providing tips for managers on how to engage employee working remotely. The bot started immediately with over 1,000 conversations a month and was very successful helping employees through the pandemic, offering much needed access to important information. But following the success of their first employee-facing bot, where is Bosch now? How are they perfecting self-service? While using Cognigy, Bosch today has more than 120 bots in over 40 countries, employee-facing, customer-facing, and even an internal audit bot. For example, a specific use case in the US, chatbot Pascal has taken over the workload from agents, fully solving more than 80% of customer inquiries and is available 24/7. Chatbot Freeze, who sits on the Bosch.com website and offers conversation on innovation, AI, to consumers in several languages. And then the audit bot that detects double payments and sends an email to the accounting team. Real value, real result that saved Bosch 200,000 euros in 1 year. So some of the success factors for Bosch perfecting self-service is getting orchestration right. Integration, having access to the backend system, using Cognigy AI as a data orchestration platform. Also using Cognigy Insights, Bosch has standardized reporting across countries. And finally, because it's a journey and they're still perfecting self-service, they are reusing existing solution and expanding quickly new use cases across the company.
Yeah, well, one, I just want to say that example was great because I think what it reflected was all the tenets we've been talking about, right? It was first of all committing to ensuring you're adding value with self-service, not just sort of deflecting some stuff, but looking at what it really means. But secondly, that example speaks to the cohesiveness of the organization. When everyone is working together and your tools are aligned, not only are you going to lead to higher degrees of customer utilization, but as you showed, employees and internal functions can benefit greatly as well because they're seeing how the AI works. They're getting all this additional information. They're tapping into the technology too. And so again, it reminds us that truly perfect self-service is self-service that is part of the overall operational strategy, the overall effort to orchestrate journeys, not just kind of being a one-off deflection tool. Now, as for the action plan, one, we want to make sure that every self-service initiative is committed to the 6 keys of a great CX. And this is both when the customer is using the bot, as well as how the bot contributes to the overall journey. And that is, it should make things easy. It should not be difficult. If self-service is hard for me to use, why would I use it? Why would I not just wait for the live agent? I'm supposed to be saving time and energy. So ease of use is so important. 2, conversational capabilities. I have FAQ pages. I can Google basic support questions. I can watch generic YouTube videos about how to install something. If I want to truly gain value from this self-service interaction, it needs to allow me to be conversational, share problems in my own words, and tailor responses to what I'm saying. Data-driven is key. It has to be aligned with what customers are asking, what I as an individual customer needs, and really collect all that together. And of course, it has to consistently update over time. You also want to have, it has to be relevant. You don't want to have a bot that just spews endless information from your knowledge base. Really tailoring that information to what the customer needs at that given moment is extremely important. Predictiveness is key. Learning from what customers are saying, learning from how individual customers are reacting to ensure that the next interaction and the next interaction consistently get better and more relevant. And then finally, connected. It has to have a seamless pathway to other parts of your experience, other parts of your operation in order to be effective.
Yes, and our second point is to identify how enhanced self-service adds value to overall CX. The focus, as we discussed at length right now, cannot be about deflection rate. But one of the good metrics that we often use and to identify this enhanced self-service is possibly resolution rate. How do we actually resolve what we set out to do in self-service. Again, there's so many metrics here, but the overall focus of that should be to add value to the overall CX. So this is a good way for us to measure if we are on the way of perfecting this next generation self-service.
Yeah, and you know, we can say, oh, self-service is amazing and there's all this technology, but we know that customers have had decades of bad experiences with IVRs. They've had years of bad experiences with bots. And so if we're going to try to make self-service effective in our journey, there's going to be an education period. We're going to have to let customers know all the value they can get from using our self-service tool. We're going to have to let employees know, now that we're collecting all this information, how can you make the conversation more personal and relevant for the customer? And so there is a training and conditioning and education process that absolutely has to be part of your plan to ensure that everyone's making the most of your next generation self-service investment.
And finally, we have to establish company-wide ROI metrics for our initiatives. Again, this cannot be one part of the organization or the enterprise. This is going to be across the entire journey. So it's going to be looking at the ROI metrics and how we're able to measure success and return. This return on the investment making is essential here. And it has to be enterprise-wide, company-wide.
Yeah. So with that, let's move into our takeaways as we wrap up here. So starting with one, remember that self-service is not an isolated one-off endeavor. It's not auxiliary or separate to your experience. It is a fundamental part of your customer journey. And that means two things. One, self-service has to be a means to a better experience. Whether it's solving certain problems, whether it's gathering data, it should contribute to a better, more memorable, more satisfying, more loyalty-inducing overall experience. Two, because it is part of this journey, it reflects upon your brand. That means that if every self-service interaction is not frictionless, personalized, and if it isn't predictive and proactive, it's going to reflect negatively on your organization. So make sure that when someone interacts with your bot, they are getting the same value that they would have gotten if they were to speak to a live agent. And if they escalate, that it feels like it's part of the same journey. If you don't have that cohesion, you're not going to be satisfying today's customers.
Our third takeaway is perfecting self-service, well, as we discussed, going to involve orchestrating experience that's going to leverage self-service. Now, we've discussed this. We have to look at this across the experience, and there's many touch points. And the idea that, you know, we have one data source coming and the other one, right? Getting the right data, but then having the right source and the right data and the broader data, but also how we then effectively and successfully do handover. So this idea of getting the data, orchestrating, accomplishing what we set out in self-service, but also having the orchestration to then possibly hand over to another channel. So that's going to create that seamless customer service experience. And that's going to help, in turn, the agents to provide that superior enhanced service.
Yeah. And so as we move to the next two takeaways, so what Kareem said is great. Like, we want this seamless experience. We want this perfect handover, but let's face it, we're not there yet. Most organizations don't have a 360-degree view. Most organizations don't have a truly end-to-end experience. And so in order to make this happen, we have to identify what about our technology, what about our operation is not aligned, is not connected. Because until we connect those barriers and bridge those gaps, we're not going to be able to deliver truly effective self-service that is part of the experience as opposed to a tack on or an addition to an already broken one. And then another takeaway that we have here is, don't just settle for minimizing the number of calls. Focus on maximizing the value you deliver for your customers. And that means that don't look at self-service as a way to get by with the bare minimum or hopefully to solve as many generic or boring issues as possible. Use it as a way to enhance what the customer sees. When they can leverage conversational AI, geo-targeted information, personalized offers, real-time translation, anything modern technology can do, they're going to get into that bot and they're going to be wowed by how relevant this conversation was, how helpful it was. And when that is their mentality, not only will they use your self-service in the future, but they will love your brand as one that truly knows them, values them, and is committed to them.
Now, our final two takeaways. First, measure success based on value added to the overall CX. This cannot be transactional in nature. This has to be centered around value. So then the importance of, if we cannot measure it, we cannot improve it. So importance here of having the right measurements around the value add to the customer experience. And the last takeaway that we have is considering establishing a center of excellence to perfect the next generation self-service. And just coming back to this example earlier of Bosch, coming from this first virtual assistant that they built during the pandemic that was just employee facing, to now what they have today is 120 virtual assistants across 40 countries. Well, they have established a center of excellence called the Bosch chatbot suite. And that what allows them to do is to have a complete view across the organization, to have a consistent strategy and engagement across the various teams to make this. So you may be, after this, especially after this masterclass about perfecting, considering establishing a center of excellence. This is certainly, we see an importance, and it's a key for success as well. So wanted to leave you with this thought of maybe as a next steps for perfecting, maybe considering establishing a center of excellence. Well, we certainly appreciated the time and the attendance today. Thank you for joining us. Certainly want to thank Brian for joining us and providing so many insights. We have more to come in our Cognigy MasterClass series, but thank you for joining and thank you for attending today.